Benny is coming back to us soon, but it's 2022, and I want to answer one question that guys have in your mind. Is he still worth it? Now, I use Venti a lot of the time, and there's some strengths for the character, but there's also a lot of weaknesses. And really, if you want to use him, it's going to be dependent on your play style, because really there's three big characters when it comes to offensive Anemo supporting. That's going to be Venti, Sucrose, and Kazuha. Now, each of these characters specialize in a certain thing, so we're going to break that down for you real quick. Now, offensive support Anemo characters do a very specific thing. They have a slight amount of crowd control. They also have a way to boost your damage. They all wear the Viridescent Venerer set, and then that's kind of where their similarities end. Kazuha is known for buffing up your elemental bonus damage percent with his elemental mastery build. Sucrose gives you elemental mastery based on hers, which in tune gives you huge damage on different elemental related reactions, most of the time being used with Vaporize or Melt. On top of that, you have hard, super good crowd control from Venti, and also have the way to boost up energy regeneration for your team with his elemental skill on its low cooldown, as well as his elemental burst. Now, Venti's elemental skill is a very, very low cooldown, 6-second cooldown on the press. You pretty much only ever use it this way, and you will almost always press your E and immediately go into your elemental burst, because it's going to get you out of that little bit of short animation lock. His elemental burst is going to have one downside on it. Now, if you're a melee range player, it likes to suck a bunch of stuff way up in the air. Now, certain characters can hit them if you have any sort of melee AoE character. Certain ones like Ayaka or even Raiden Shogun, Kamisato Yato can hit them while they're up just briefly over the ground, while some characters can't. Most of the cast in Genshin actually can't hit anything while those enemies are flying above your head. Well, so that's gonna be a big con there. Another downside is that, well, sometimes it's a little bit hard to aim Venti's elemental burst. Sometimes there'll be 7 dudes right in front of you, and you will turn around to the dude with 1 HP and fire your elemental burst outside of the abyss, trying to suck up as much air as possible to keep Genshin safe. We know it, you know it, we've all done it before. Another con for Venti here is there are larger and bigger and heavier monsters in Genshin than there used to be a year ago. He can't crowd control everything that you see with his elemental burst. We've seen Geo Visheps, etc. So that is going to be a little bit of a downside in 2022 compared to what he used to be able to do. However, another pro for Venti here is that he is the character able to swirl the most amount of times in the quickest succession due to how fast the swirl ticks are on his elemental burst. You see this on a lot of very popular team comps, like Ganyu's most popular one, the Morgana team, where you use the Mona elemental burst in conjunction with Ganyu's elemental burst and Venti's elemental burst. And while you end up with this smorgasbord of just permanently frozen enemies with that Mona debuff locked on them, because Venti's going to keep refreezing everything over and over. The final pro for Venti is his Ascension Storm Eye, which is going to give you 15 energy for whatever your elemental burst swirls. So if you have someone like a freeze team party with Ganyu, Diona, this is going to give 15 energy back to them as well. And it also gives him back 15 energy, which makes him very easy to build, and the rest of your characters already ready to rock and roll with their elemental bursts as soon as they come up. It helps a ton. Now, pros for Kazuha, he's actually really fun to play. He also has extremely low cooldown on his elemental skill. If you press it, it is a very low 6-second cooldown. However, if you hold it, it's slightly increased to 9 seconds. Both the E's for Venti and Kazuha are extremely short, even if you choose to use Kazuha's hold version of that E. Another strength for him is if you just want to do some raw damage out there, fold him with a lot of elemental mastery, which is what you do with either of these characters, and you're going to be able to get up to 40% elemental damage bonus for anyone that you want in your party. You see this all the time with big damage number videos with 1,000 elemental mastery Kazuha as well. Now, another thing that he's okay at, his elemental burst is a very wide area, but it doesn't tick for as many swirl counts as something like Venti's elemental burst does. It also does not have the crowd control like Venti's elemental burst does. The one real con to Kazuha is that the only real crowd control that he has is a little pull in on his hold version of his elemental skill. You can still gather groups of enemies up together, but not nearly as well as Venti's elemental burst does. Not to be forgotten, Sucrose is here as well, and she's got a lot of very powerful things in her kit as well. She is the reaction-based Anemo support due to both of her ascensions. Her first one here giving 50 elemental mastery to the matching element of what she swirls, and her second ascension giving elemental mastery equivalent to 20% of her own. This is extremely powerful, especially with Melt and Vaporize. 1000 elemental mastery Sucrose is going to give you 250 elemental mastery, and here's how powerful it is for Melt and Vaporize. This is my Hu-Tao with 156 elemental mastery, and it increases Vaporize and Melt by 27.9%, which is amazing, and that is its own multiplier that's additional with Melt and Vaporize's own bonus, but it is way different than adding on another 27% to, say, your pyro damage bonus. This damage bonus is absolutely amazing. Say you were doing 100,000 damage beforehand, now you're going to do 127,000 damage, which is a huge damage increase. But Sucrose does have some very big downsides, especially at Constellation 0, because she has the longest cooldown of all 3 Anemo supports on her elemental skill. It is 15 seconds long, and until you get Constellation 1 here, you're only going to have 1 charge. So getting Constellation 1 here helps her out a lot. That puts her down to about a 7.5 second on average cooldown on her E. You can use 2 charges if you want to, or you can use 1, wait till that one's half refreshed and use it again, and it's almost as good as if you had that 6-second cooldown on either Kazuha or Venti's elemental skill. If you end up getting C6 Sucrose, she does do a pretty good impersonation of the damage bonus that Kazuha can do, because she's going to give you 20% damage bonus on top of what she does with her elemental mastery build, and giving your characters elemental mastery for their reaction bonuses, which is going to be about half of what the damage bonus would be from a big 1000 elemental mastery build Kazuha. So you get half of what Kazuha would give you, and then get all that reaction damage bonus as well. Another thing you can use to mitigate that big cooldown is the Sacrificial Fragments book for Sucrose. It does 2 very relevant things for her. It gives you elemental mastery to help out your elemental mastery build, but it also gives you a chance to reset the cooldown on your elemental skill, which makes her, even at C0, an incredibly powerful character for these reaction-based team compositions. For Venti and Kazuha, honestly, you can throw whatever elemental mastery weapon you have laying around. Iron Sting's a craftable weapon for Kazuha. You could also have access to everyone's favorite bow, the Stringless, which has a very substantial 165 elemental mastery for Venti as well. And all 3 of these characters are basically built the same way. You want Viridescent Venom set 4-piece for that elemental resistance down, and then for your Circlet, Sands, as well as your Goblet, main stat elemental mastery, and find as much elemental mastery in your substats for your Flower and Feather. And once you have your Viridescent Venom set built up, if you end up pulling multiple of these Anemo characters and working on them, you can freely swap around this set and use them for their specific strengths at your leisure. So when you think about pulling for Venti in 2022, he's really there do 2 big things that he excels in. Hard crowd control, which is a little bit harder to do against some of the bigger bosses we've seen in Genshin at the end of 2021 and at the start of 2022, as well as energy regeneration. That's his big thing there with the Viridescent Venom set. You have Kazuha that just wants to increase your raw damage output on any character that he can swirl with, as well as give you a nice amount of swirl damage just like Venti does. And then for your reaction-based team composition, Sucrose is still the master of those, boosting your damage up by a significant margin, especially if you're looking at Melt and Vaporize. Let me know what you want, and I'll see you guys in the next one.